Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Jackie and I am the owner and creator here at the Denwood Design Studio. Today we're doing a Valentine's inspired peekaboo tumbler with a layered decal using heat transfer vinyl. This was a pretty simple design and I think it only took about 2 days from start to finish to have it completed. And I'm so pleased with the way that this turned out. I can't wait to share my process with you all. As always, all of the supplies I've used will be linked in the description box below. And without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so the basis for every tumbler starts with your prep. And I'm going to do just what I normally do for prepping my cups. So I start with a 60 grit sanding block and I just rough up the cup. You want to give something that the paint and the epoxy can stick to. So I just go all over the cup really thoroughly. Make sure you get from bottom to top all the way up around the edges. And then you want to make sure that you get the bottom. And this is really just going to ensure the longevity of your design. So once the cup is fully sanded, I wipe it down with a lint-free cloth, give it a spray with some alcohol, thoroughly dry it, and then I don't touch it again. So we're going to spray this, and I used a Premier Paint and Primer Candy Pop Satin. So once the cup is fully dry, we're going to go ahead and heat the cup up and apply our epoxy. So off camera, I've mixed up approximately 5 mils of part A and part B. I had some other projects kind of on the go, so I was able to use the excess. You're going to use about 1 milliliter of epoxy, so just a tiny amount. Warming up the cup really helps it to spread really evenly. You can use a space heater, you can use a stove, like a fireplace kind of thing, whatever works for you. And I just start with the tiniest little bit on the bottom of the cup, work it really well into those ridges, down and over the sides, all the way around the cup. You're going to feel some resistance initially, and that drag just is what's proving to you don't have epoxy on that spot. So once you've got it so that you're not feeling that drag or that resistance anymore, you know that you're fully coated. So I just dip my finger in a couple of times. You really, really want to be sparing on this. If you use too much epoxy, you're going to see lines in your design. And if you don't have enough, you're going to have bare spots. So it's kind of a fine line, and it takes a little bit of practice to kind of figure out where you need to, what you need to use, more or less, basically. So once you've got it all thoroughly covered, you can go ahead and let that stand for just a couple of moments and let everything even out, and then go ahead and glitter your cup. So I'm using Razzle Ruby by Cat from the Cat Glitter Factory. And I always start on the bottom of the cup, and we're not going to get full coverage in the first pass here. So I'm just looking to basically cover the whole cup as best I can, and then go over it again and again a couple of times until everything is thoroughly coated. You'll be able to see some spots in behind, and that's where you want to concentrate on just making sure you get full coverage. So we're just going to finish up here on the first pass, and then you'll see the difference when I've gone over it again. So you just really want to make sure you get all the way to the very edges. You don't want any bare spots anywhere. And so I gathered up what was left on the page and I put it back in the bottle, and then I just made another quick pass from top to bottom. And there you see where it's got really good coverage all the way around. There's no bare spots, there's no lines. We've used a great amount of epoxy. It's perfect. So we're going to let that hang dry for a couple of hours, and then we're going to add our epoxy. So I think I mixed about 25 or 30 milliliters of epoxy, and we're just going to go ahead and thoroughly coat this cup. I didn't spray seal it, or use quick coat just for this part yet. Again, it's just one color of epoxy, so I'm not really worried about the glitter moving at all or mixing into an area where I don't want it to mix into. And letting it hang for a couple of hours just really helps lock that glitter in place. So I wasn't too worried about any of that moving. So I just went ahead and put on a pretty generous amount of epoxy here. And again, you just want to make sure you smooth it all the way around. You don't want to miss any spots at all, top to bottom. Coat that bottom and the bottom edge really, really well. And this is just going to level out on the turner here over the next few hours. So we're just going to coat that bottom really, really well, and then go all the way over it from bottom to top. Use up all that epoxy. And again, I think it was 20 or 30 mils that I used. And the epoxy I use is a 1-to-1 ratio, so equal parts of part A to part B. So once that's all on there, we're going to let it sit for a couple minutes, and then we're going to go ahead and give it a quick torch just to pop any micro bubbles. And again, just a quick pass. Don't stay in any one area for too long. You don't want to burn your epoxy. And we're going to let that epoxy cure for about 4 to 6 hours before going in and doing our second flood coat, which we're then going to let cure for the full 8 to 12 hours. And once that second coat is on there, we're going to go ahead and look for any rough spots or any little areas that need to be sanded. We want to have for this cup a really super smooth area because we are going to be spray painting over this, and any bumps will be really apparent and then will just be magnified tenfold once the epoxy goes on. So we just want to really make sure it's nice and smooth. And then we want to smooth out that top rim as well and expose a little area of stainless steel, and that's going to be the area that our epoxy creates a really good seal all along the top. So you can use your sanding block. I have a bit of a quicker method that works better for me, and I use a Dremel. Either one, there's no right or wrong. You just want to be really careful if you are using a Dremel. iPro is really important for this. This does kick off a lot of fine dust and particulate, so you really want to make sure your eyes are covered. And I don't normally work at this angle, so I made a little bit of a slip there, but I was able to fix that off camera at a later time. So you just want to go all the way around nice and slow and expose that really thin line of stainless steel at the very top. And again, that's just going to create a really significant seal for our epoxy so that our rim is just really secure. So now that that's all done, I'm going to go into Design Space here, and I've created the logo or the decal that I'm going to be using along with what's going to be the little peekaboos underneath the cup. So I just think I went in and typed randomly hearts and then picked the ones that I liked. And then the logo, or the main decal, Wild at Heart, was actually also in Design Space. And because we're going to do that first one on heat transfer vinyl, you saw there that I made sure to mirror that image. The rest of them will stay just the way that they are. So we're going to go ahead and cut that all out, and I've just used a removable vinyl, and that's what I'm going to be sticking all of the little peekaboos. It makes it a little easier for them to come up. This is the bottom foil, and then this one is the middle layer. So we're just going to quickly weed these all out, and there is no rhyme or reason as to kind of their placement on the vinyl. I just wanted them all grouped together so that I can go ahead and lift them off and place them onto the cup from there at my own will. So it took a little bit of time. Some of these were pretty intricate, but I really love them, and I'm always so happy with an intricate design because it's definitely worth the time spent on them. So just spent a little bit of time here weeding, and then pull it all through when it's all said and done. Some areas were a little bit more tricky than others, and so a couple of pieces I had to hand lay down once they separated. from the original main piece of vinyl there, so you'll see me do that a couple of times here, especially with those bottom two hearts. They were just a little bit more intricate than I wanted, but it worked, so I was so happy with how this came out. So really take your time and don't be thrown off by intricate designs, guys. They're so worth it. Just stick it through, go nice and slow, segment it off for yourself if you have to. You saw there that I had cut the main piece away, so you're not dealing with all that excess sticky stuff. And so I just hand laid this piece down and carried on. So the piece on the left is my bottom piece there, and it is adhesive foil. So just because it curls up like that, I always find it easier to work if it's nice and flat, especially when we're layering, where you really need to make sure that you get everything lined up really, really, really well. So I just taped that down with a little bit of painter's tape, and then we're going to go ahead and transfer that black piece, Wild at Heart, onto the kind of more raspberry colored one. So we're just going to burnish it onto the transfer paper really, really well. Make sure we've got no bubbles. And we just really want this to go over in one nice piece all together. And there's really, I mean, there's lots of different ways that you can line this up. I just eyeball it because that's what works best for me. I've been doing it for a while, so it's not that hard for me, but it does take a little bit of time, and all I can say is just keep practicing. There are also lots of tutorials out there that will show you some tips and tricks for lining things up, but I just kind of eyeball it, like I said. So those were both adhesive vinyl. This next piece is the top piece, and I had a little bit of heat transfer vinyl left over that I don't think I was going to use. So let's move this closer in so you can see what I'm going to do here. So heat transfer vinyl needs to be applied with heat. Normally you would use a heat press, but in this case, because it's going to be layered on top of a decal, I just used my heat gun for this, the same heat gun that I used to warm up the cup. So I'm just going to place it kind of where I like it, and once I've got it where I do, I go ahead and apply a little bit of heat. And the other thing with heat transfer vinyl, especially this holographic stuff, is it is recommended that it is the final layer so that you're not layering another heat transfer on top of it. They do recommend that you use that as your main or final piece, the top piece essentially. So I'm just going to go over this with the heat gun. I had it on high setting, which was fine. When you go to push down on it, just remember it will be really hot on that plastic carrier sheet. So I did burn my finger a little bit there. So live and learn. And I just used my burnishing tool, my scraper, and smoothed everything down once I had it on there. And I kept the heat gun handy because I did have to go back over this. You'll see when I go to lift it up, I think the bottom of the H started to lift a little bit. So just go really slow when you are lifting up that carrier sheet. And if anything does start to lift, it's okay. Just lay it right back down and just keep applying heat to it. So there you can see the H lifted. So we're just going to apply a little bit more heat to that area and kind of to the tops of some of the other ones just to make sure, and just really push it down. And then when you're pretty sure you've got it all in there, go ahead and lift that carrier sheet up, and hopefully everything's all stuck down for you. So it wasn't too hard at all. It really only took about 1.5 minutes, I think, in total to get it to where I wanted it. And then you can go ahead and use just regular transfer paper to transfer the whole thing over. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place that decal on the cup without removing the backing paper, just for placement so I can see where I want. It's going to be the last thing that goes on the cup. So I'm just going to trim the edges of it here and tape it onto the cup. And then I'm going to go ahead and place all the rest of those decals, the hearts, all around it. And you'll see when we go to spray paint, this will just make a little bit more sense here. But basically we're leaving a blank area to apply this decal, and it's going to be going on top of black spray paint here. So basically just making space for it here. And then we're going to go ahead and put all of the hearts on the cup. And there's no rhyme or reason for this. Put them where you like, anywhere you want. I did want it to be a bit of a busier cup, but I didn't want it to be overwhelming. So there is a little bit of a balance there. And again, at the end of the day, it is art, so it's subjective. What I like, you might not, and vice versa. You may think you want it less or you want more yourself. It's all basically the look that you're after. So I had a pretty clear idea of what I was shooting for to start with, and I'm very happy with the way that it came out. So we're just transferring the hearts onto the transfer paper, and then we're just going to apply them to the cup in all the other areas. And make sure you don't forget the bottom, guys. So there's a couple of little heart designs that I made sure I got on the bottom as well. It just really completes the design. And there we go. I did put another one on the bottom, but that gives you the idea. So we're just going to keep going at that until all the designs are on there, or till you're satisfied with the designs that you have. And once they're all on there, I want to make sure that they're pushed down really well. There's no lifted spots. Anything lifted is where paint will get under. And then I went out and I painted this with the 2x Rust-oleum in Canyon Black, and it's satin. The big thing is you want to let your paint fully dry before you carefully peel off these decals. So you can see, I'm doing it on my lap just so you can see a little bit better. And I've got a piece of parchment paper down, and I try really hard, I am touching the cup a couple of times, but I try really hard to use that parchment paper around the cup, because no matter how dry your spray paint is, your fingerprints will show up on it. And of course, under epoxy, it will really just be amplified. So very, very carefully lift up all of these decals. You want to really make sure you don't end up scratching the paint. So I'm just using a pair of tweezers, and I do have kind of like a little dental pick tool as well for some of the other designs. That was a little bit easier, but for these little lines, the tweezers were the best option. And there we go. So you can see the glitter coming up underneath. This is why we call it the peekaboo. And then once I was done with all of this, I did spray the cup really quickly and lightly with a 71% alcohol. And that was able to give me the ability to just sort of remove any smudges or fingerprints and things like that. You don't want to use anything stronger than 71% because you will remove paint. So there's the space that we left for our main decal to go on. So I'm just getting a piece of transfer tape, and we're going to go ahead and apply this like we would any other decal. So laying it down, you want to smooth it all out, make sure you get no bubbles. Burnish it on there really, really well so that it all lifts up in one shot. And then we're going to go ahead and transfer that into that nice open space that we've left for ourselves. And foil can be a little bit of a challenge, guys, so you're not alone if you kind of struggle with it. I get a lot of messages about just what a devil it can be, so I understand, and I have my own battles with it too. So slow and steady wins the race. You see a piece is lifted there, so just work it down. and it'll all work out. And then we're going to go ahead and place this right in the center of where we've left our space. So I'm just making sure I'm centered there on the pool noodle. And again, you see the parchment paper underneath, and that just keeps any smudges or kind of random bits of anything on from a kind of sticking into that paint. And then we're just going to burnish it on there really, really well with our thumb and finger, really making sure that we keep everything as flat down to the cup as possible. And I was so impressed. If you've done a good enough job with your heat transfer vinyl, it will not lift when you're taking that transfer tape up. So, and there we go. Everything is applied and it's now ready for its next layers of epoxy here. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on the turner. And I'm going to apply some quick coat. So off camera, I'd already done that. I just brushed on a little tiny bit of quick coat just onto the decal. And that just helped really seal it down so none of that vinyl lifts at all. And then just like before, we're going to apply a nice even coat of epoxy, making sure that we get right up to that lip. We don't want to miss any areas here. And this just makes the sparkle from all that glitter underneath really, really pop. And it's just gorgeous. So we make sure we get from top to bottom, all down the bottom, all around that rim at the top, get a really good seal. We don't want any weak spots on the bottom, and we just want to make sure that the top is really, really coated as well, especially to that little exposed piece of stainless steel that we'd left. And once that's all on there, we're going to go ahead and give that a quick torch, and then we're going to go ahead and let that epoxy dry for 4 to 6 hours before we put our final coat on, and then that final coat will cure for the full 12 hours. Thanks so much, you guys. I really appreciate you checking out this video. To see more videos just like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell so you are notified of any of our upcoming videos. Thanks again.